Welcome back, Chooms. One Dragon here. I've been covering unlisted changes in Cyberpunk 2077 since patch 1.2, and as always, Cyberpunk 2077's patch notes exclude a huge amount of changes that have significant influence on gameplay. This means that some of the most impactful changes or fixes to the game frequently go unseen or unreported. For example, in patch 1.2, they completely rebalanced the economy and somewhat fixed crit stacking on clothing mods. However, sometimes it's understandable as they add items linked to the story or dialogue. For example, when they changed Takumura's eyes and added dialogue lines. Unfortunately, the fact that there is a huge amount of unlisted changes makes it very hard to distinguish between the intended behavior of things and bugs. So, as I've been playing and making videos, I've compiled a list of undocumented changes that I've noticed, or some interesting ones that I think are worth highlighting that are not really highlighted in the patch notes. I've decided to categorize them into 4 different sections: quality of life changes, mechanics and balance, open world finds and immersion, and then spoilers. Alright, starting with quality of life changes, as a person who regularly checks on cyberware and likes to experiment with different ones, I really appreciate how they added 3 new fast travel points nearby to the Ripper Docks without a close fast travel point, specifically Kabuki, Arroyo, and the Rancho Coronado one. Speaking of fast travel, they've added the need to click and hold to fast travel. After having played the game so long, I keep forgetting this, and keep staring at the map after I've clicked on the fast travel data term. In earlier patches, I used to have to regularly deposit or sell grenades, alcohol, and cyberware mods I looted from enemies. However, in patch 1.5, inventory management is a lot easier since the weight of those items has been removed and is now 0. Speaking of inventory management, the Scrapper perk no longer salvages the 150 Eddy items, as they've been changed to jewelry rather than junk items. Also, in patch 1.3, they removed the ability to access the stash from bikes or vehicles without trunks or boots. However, this has been seemingly reverted in patch 1.5. If you combine these unlisted changes with the listed change of decluttering a lot of scenes and areas, it allows for players to better enjoy the aesthetics or design rather than being encumbered partway through the mission and having to salvage, or just farming enemies more efficiently. Also, I'm really grateful that they've reduced the amount of icons that are just overlaid over a lot of scenes. Additionally, the number of phone calls the player gets while exploring the open world has been significantly reduced by the listed change of streamlining and capping the number of gigs available, and the unlisted change of the NCPD dispatcher messaging details about crime rather than calling. Next, I wanted to discuss some of the mechanics and balance changes. So one of the first things I noticed when I started my new playthroughs was how difficult the tutorial boxing robot was on very hard, and potentially new boxing mechanics. The first thing, other than the increased durability, was its ability to block a counterattack. Typically, if you time your block and land a counterattack, it's a free hit. However, it managed to block every counterpunch that I threw at it. I think it also has a new attack combo as well, involving uppercutting, so I'm not sure if this made the other boxing matches more interesting, but let me know as I haven't got that far in my new playthrough yet. Interestingly, all cyberware arms received some changes this patch. The gorilla arms had their elemental glow fixed in patch 1.3, but the color at the tops of the fingers and knuckles were bugged. However, now they're seemingly fixed. There's one for each element or damage over time effect. Next, in terms of functionality, weapons such as Comrade's Hammer, the power sniper rifles, precision rifles, and light machine guns have had their requirement of 6 body changed to 10 body. However, the gorilla arms now provide an extra 2 body at rare, 4 at epic, or 6 body at legendary, which apply to body checks. This includes the use of heavier weapons, opening doors, and so on. If you build glass cannon like myself, then you actually need to invest only 4 points in body to use the weapons, provided you equip the gorilla arms. Personally, this meant that I could go around and open a bunch of the doors on the characters that didn't invest into body, so that's exactly what I did.
Law and order guarantee citizens a safe life. For your own safety, please maintain Welcome to Night City.
In patch 1.5, the monowire was moved to the reflexes tree instead of the cool tree. This could allow monowire builds more flexibility in weapon choice, as reflexes buff a lot of range weapons and blades. In early patches, I frequently used the projectile launcher to complete missions at a lower level than recommended due to its ability to use tranquilizer rounds, knocking out enemies regardless of how much damage it dealt. Normally, I could just put the target in the center of the aim, however, it seemed to fire at the bottom left area in this patch. This could be a bug, but I'm not sure. Taking a look at the Mantis blades, they now have a brighter glow and when paired with Hidden Dragon have an aerial finisher. As is the case with other finishers, they have a lengthy animation, so I'd recommend using the optical camo before using this move if you're not tanky enough to survive getting attacked by other enemies. Speaking of finishers, I noticed a new one using the katana, thrusting the blade through an enemy's chest. That one was pretty badass. There's also some seemingly new animations for drawing weapons or arms for the first time. Next, we have a lot of changes to mechanics. For example, guns that use silencers in patch 1.3 could ricochet bullets. However, they've now removed that functionality if you equip a silencer. Another example is the Overwatch no longer pierces through walls.
Oh, fuck it!
So in terms of stats, I've made a video taking a look at the damage nerfs, but stats like crit have been reduced significantly and headshot multipliers have been halved. Crit was and still is an important stat for all-rounder builds, since every weapon, fists, some quick hacks, and grenades can eventually crit. The exception being the damage over time conditions, such as burning, bleeding, poison, and shock. As mentioned in the patch notes, there's a whole bunch of new clothing mods and changes to mod slots. However, there's also been a change to the stats on clothing themselves. In previous patches, if you found an item that did not have maximum mod slots, it had a small amount of additional armor in place of each missing mod slot. Although, in this recent update, clothing can have a range of impactful stats instead of mod slots. Some good examples are bonus damage to enemies, crit damage, quick hack cooldown, and possibly damage mitigation. In terms of crafting, stats of weapons at a legendary tier no longer have random stats. This is an image of 3 Moran Labays from patch 1.31. You can see that they often have very different headshot modifiers or do not have ricochet damage. Another nice unlisted change to crafting is the fact that you can now preview the clothing on your character before you craft it. Open world finds and immersion. For me, one of the first details I noticed was changes to V's shadow. Instead of always being bold, it now outlines the hair and clothing. Next, I noticed a lot of new audio. First one was V walking and the sound effects of the fabrics rubbing against each other as you move, or the squeaky sounds of rubber. There's also plenty of new ambient sounds and seemingly new NPC dialogue in the open world. For example, when I drove past this rubbish tip, there was an announcement stating stealing trash was illegal, and I don't remember ever hearing that one before.
Taking trash is theft.
I've done some exploring throughout Night City, and in terms of open world changes, one of the first things I noticed was they saved the underwater cat that's in Kabuki. It now sits on a container. Additionally, just further behind this is a dancing robot. I believe this is a reference to the movie Chappie. There's also this woman crying at the docks on the east side of Haywood. If you dive into the water, there's actually a key underwater. If you retrieve it for her, she'll pay you 1,000 eddies.
There you go.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Apparently they added a lot of the features that the original female V has in character creation, so now you can select those. In patch 1.3, they started adding more events and behaviors for NPCs. For example, there were a few extra groups of people doing Tai Chi, or some gangs have areas where they had shooting practice or shooting contests. One of the most prominent examples in patch 1.5 was the police chasing gangs. I came across a couple of them in Santo Domingo and one in Watson. However, I think there's one in Haywood, but I haven't seen that one personally yet. They're all pretty cool and add that layer of immersion to Night City. I actually followed one of the police cars around after they defeated 6th Street, and I was quite surprised as they took a pretty long drive around the city for about 7 or 8 minutes before eventually coming to a permanent stop. A few other good examples are the ones in Pacifica, where there are guards placed outside of each store. In patch 1.5, they seem to have some sort of schedule, sometimes sitting indoors instead of permanently standing outside their stores. Also, I feel like the crowds in 1.5 are more diverse. And even more interestingly, some of them pulled out umbrellas in the rain. All these behavioral changes and events, combined with finally having a walk button on PC, make for a pretty immersive experience just walking around Night City. Welcome to the spoiler section. So Cyberpunk 2077 never really puts any changes they make to the story in patch notes to avoid spoilers. I've only played through Act 1 and tested the new fixer weapons in the ending and explored the open world on old saves, so there's probably a lot more to find. When I finally started a new character, the first change I noticed was being able to skip the brain dance tutorial from Judy. Having played through the story over 10 times, I'm grateful to finally be able to skip this. I also noticed that the Maelstrom vendor is now easily accessible if you pay off Royce with your own money.
Got it.
Nova, otherwise I'll lose my manners.
One of the things that I always do in the heist is interact with the iguana. However, this time it didn't let me interact like normal. And it turned out that this was because I needed to pick up an egg.
Back in a sec, and you do your damn job.
Check out that weird-ass lizard.
After meeting with Takamura, I could place it in a bowl in V's apartment, and V states, patience is a virtue.
Patience is a virtue.
Obviously hinting at it'll take a while for it to hatch. After a really long while of playing and then eventually skipping a bunch of time, an iguana hatches, and you can go and pet it.
Who would have thought?
I'll give you a minute.
There's also a unique interaction that it has with the cat, which is sleeping together on a beanbag next to the door. It's kind of adorable. This one's a little bit harder to notice, but Delamain actually has missiles at the back of the car. It normally fires at the drones that are chasing you after the heist. However, in patch 1.5, it wouldn't fire any of the missiles at the drones. It was really cool to see a younger Saburo Arasaka while playing as Johnny in the
なぜ
past.
このようなことを
Why did you do this?
To bring an end to the madness you wreak. 人は嘘をつき自分自身を欺く。だが死者は違う。死者は雄弁だが彼らは決して嘘をつかない。死者の言葉にはつつましさがある。始めろ。
Personally, I really enjoyed the lighting changes they made to that nightmare scene when you wake up and Johnny tries to kill V. They also added some new sound effects whenever Johnny appears.
I can feel it. Our minds touching. I'm like mold on fruit, creeping into you. Nothing I can do about it. You hear me? I'd puke if I fucking could. It's just a copy of the engram. I'm out there somewhere. Gotta be.
Gonna kill you!
Do it. What are you waiting for?
When you return to the afterlife after the heist and you talk to Claire, you can now buy a Jackie Wells and a Johnny Silverhand drink. So there were a few other things I noticed in some old saves. For example, a gig known as Woman of La Mancha. During this mission, you have to convince a cop to stop their investigation. If you selected the Nomad life path, you can actually convince her to join the Aldecaldos. However, prior to patch 1.5, I couldn't find her. However, now she is present at the Aldecaldo
Good to
camp.
see you, Anna.
V?
They leave you with the kids. Guess you're already part of the family.
Yeah, maybe. These are good people, but, it's no night city.
How's life treating you out here? No badge weighing you down.
Well, it's heavy on dust, short on shitty bars.
But also short on shitty people.
You ever met that netrunner, Carol? She says they're paying you to promote the nomad lifestyle.
Nope.
They should.
One thing I was obviously curious about was the new romance messages, so I went to talk to some of them, and there was death and taxes available in Judy's room. This gun was added to Maiko's office in patch 1.3, however you can't return there if you've already completed the quest. So it's kind of nice that they made it available to those that have already completed it. As I was testing the new weapons in the endings, I noticed that Smasher has a new attack pattern. You can now run and launch missiles at the same time. I thought that was pretty cool. These are the significant unlisted changes that I've noticed so far. A lot of them have a huge impact for gameplay and others improve immersion. There were also a few more bug fixes and changes which I didn't mention in the video, but I'll put a few of them in the comments or the description. Thanks everyone for watching. Plenty more videos on the way and some more in-depth stuff on the channel. Let me know how you're finding patch 1.5 so far and if you found any other changes. I'll see you next time, Tubes.